Have you ever wondered why your children don't call as often as they used to? Or why, despite all the sacrifices you've made for them, there seems to be an emotional distance you can't quite explain? You may think everything is fine, but in reality, a single sentence, just a few words spoken at the wrong time, can create an invisible wall between you and your children. And the worst part? Most parents say these sentences without even realizing the damage they cause. Today, we're diving deep into 5 dangerous sentences that parents should never say to their children, especially as they grow older. Each one carries an unintended consequence, pushing your children further away, sometimes forever. And let me be clear, the last sentence on this list is the most damaging of them all. It's the one mistake that 90% of parents unknowingly make, and it can completely destroy the parent-child relationship. So, stay with me until the very end, because I'll not only reveal these 5 sentences, but I'll also show you exactly what to say instead to strengthen your bond with your children. And before we begin, let me ask you, have you ever heard a sentence from your parents that hurt you deeply, something you still remember to this day? If so, comment below and share your story. Your experience might help someone else avoid the same mistake. Now, let's get started. Before we go into the first sentence, you need to understand one thing: words are powerful. More powerful than you think. In fact, science has proven that the words we hear as children shape our self-esteem, our relationships, and even our success in life. So before we reveal the 5 sentences, let's first take a look at why what you say matters more than you realize. Words are powerful. More powerful than most people realize. You may think that once something is said, it disappears into the air. But the truth is, words don't just vanish. They stay. They settle in the minds and hearts of those who hear them, especially when they come from someone they love and trust. Science backs this up. A Harvard University study found that children remember negative words and criticism 5 times more strongly than positive words or praise. This means that even if you've said hundreds of loving words to your child, just a few sharp, critical remarks can overshadow them completely. Think about that. One careless sentence spoken in frustration can leave a mark that lingers for years, even decades. And it's not just children who are affected. Neuroscientists have discovered that the human brain is wired to prioritize negative experiences over positive ones. This is a survival mechanism designed to protect us from harm, but when applied to relationships, it has the opposite effect. This is why a single harsh sentence from a parent can create wounds that never fully heal. Have you ever had a conversation with your child where you said something out of frustration, only to realize later that their mood changed? Maybe they didn't respond as warmly. Maybe they pulled away slightly. Or maybe they just went quiet. That's the power of words at work. And here's where it gets even more concerning. Over time, these words don't just affect emotions. They shape identities. Psychologists have found that children who frequently hear negative remarks about themselves from their parents often grow up believing those words. They internalize them. A child who is repeatedly told, "You're not responsible," may grow into an adult who believes they'll never be reliable. A child who hears, "You're a failure," may subconsciously sabotage their own success because deep down, they've accepted that identity. And then, as they grow older, they distance themselves. Not because they don't love you, but because deep inside, they carry the weight of your words. So, before we dive into the 5 most dangerous sentences parents say, let me ask you this. If words have the power to shape how your children see themselves, what kind of words do you want them to remember? Let's begin with the first sentence, one that may seem harmless at first, but can quietly destroy the emotional connection between you and your children. A staggering 83% of adults admit that the words their parents said to them as children have had a lasting impact on their self-confidence and relationships. Let that sink in. For most people, childhood isn't just a collection of memories, it's a foundation. And the words spoken by parents become the inner voice that stays with their children for life. Now, think about your own childhood. Can you remember a painful sentence your parents once said to you? Maybe it was something they said in frustration, something they didn't even mean. But somehow, those words stuck with you. Maybe you've forgiven them. Maybe you've moved on. But have you really forgotten? Now, imagine this. Your child, years from now, remembering something you said. Not just remembering it, but carrying it, shaping their confidence, their relationships, even the way they see themselves. And what if that memory is one that makes them feel small? Unworthy? Not good enough? Because here's the truth, parents don't just raise children. They raise future adults. And the words you speak today become the foundation of who they will be tomorrow. So, before it's too late, let's uncover the 5 most damaging sentences that parents say, often without realizing how much harm they cause. And the first one? It's something many parents believe is a sign of strength, but in reality, it can silently push their children away forever. 5 most dangerous SAYINGS and how to overcome them. Sentence 1, I have money, my children don't need to take care of me. As parents, we say this with good intentions. We want to reassure our children that we are independent, that we don't want to be a burden. But what do they actually hear? Mom and Dad don't need me. I am not important in their lives. And over time, that small feeling of emotional distance grows into something much bigger. At first, your children may appreciate your independence. They may even admire your strength. But as the years go by, something unexpected happens. They start to believe that you truly don't need them. So, they stop checking in as often. They don't visit as much. Not because they don't love you, but because they don't feel needed. And then, one day, you wake up and realize your home is quiet. Too quiet. The phone doesn't ring as often. The laughter of your grandchildren is a distant memory. And suddenly, that independence you were so proud of, it feels more like loneliness. This is exactly what happened to Margaret, a 72-year-old retired teacher. When her son got married, she told him and his wife, "Don't worry about me, I have my savings. You focus on your own life." She truly meant it. She wanted them to be happy, free from any obligation. And for a while, everything seemed fine. She traveled, spent time with friends, enjoyed her hobbies. But as the years passed, she noticed a change. Her son called less and less. Holidays became short visits. Eventually, he stopped asking if she needed anything at all. One evening, she found herself staring at her silent phone, realizing something painful. She had created the very loneliness she never wanted. Because here's the truth, people stay close where they feel needed. When parents insist they don't need their children, they may unintentionally push them away. Not because the children don't care, but because they believe their presence doesn't matter. So, how do you fix this? The answer is simple: let them know they are important in your life. You don't have to rely on them financially. You don't have to demand their help. But you can say things like, "I love spending time with you. Hearing your voice always brightens my day. I would really appreciate your advice on this." These small shifts in language make a big difference. They remind your children that their presence matters, not because you need money, but because you need them. And remember this, being strong and independent doesn't mean being emotionally distant. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I won't push my children away. Maybe I'll even involve them a little more in my life. But what if I told you there's another mistake that parents make? One that might seem harmless, but can actually destroy trust within a family? That's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Sentence 2, my children know exactly how much money I have. At first glance, this statement might seem harmless. You're simply being transparent with your family. But what if I told you that sharing too much financial information with your children can actually damage your relationship? Because when parents openly discuss their wealth, whether big or small, it often leads to 2 dangerous outcomes. It changes the way children see you. It changes the way children see each other. Let's talk about the first one. When children know exactly how much money their parents have, something subtle but dangerous can happen. Money becomes part of the relationship. At first, they might not even realize it. But over time, financial expectations creep in. They start assuming what their parents will pay for. They start seeing their inheritance as something guaranteed. And in some cases, they begin prioritizing what they can get over who their parents are. Suddenly, conversations about family turn into conversations about money. Suddenly, visits start feeling transactional. And then there's the second problem: money can divide siblings. When parents discuss their financial situation openly, children start comparing. Who will inherit more? Who is being treated unfairly? Who deserves what? And before you know it, the love between siblings turns into silent competition. This is exactly what happened to Linda, a 68-year-old widow with 3 children. After her husband passed away, she sat down with him and said, "I want to be open about my finances so there are no surprises." She told them how much she had in savings. She told them how she planned to divide her assets. She even asked for their input on what they thought was fair. At first, everything seemed fine. But then, small things started changing. Her eldest son began visiting more often, but not out of love, out of concern for how she was spending money. Her youngest daughter started dropping hints about her financial struggles, subtly suggesting that she deserved more than her siblings. And then one day, her middle son asked, "Mom, are you sure you should be spending so much on travel? Shouldn't you be saving more for us?" That's when Linda realized the truth. By revealing her financial situation too soon, she had unintentionally changed the dynamic of her family. The focus had shifted from love and connection to money and entitlement. And the worst part? She could never take those conversations back. So, what's the solution? It's simple: keep your financial details private. This doesn't mean hiding everything from your children. It means sharing only what is necessary at the right time. If you want to discuss inheritance, do it through legal planning, not casual conversations. If your children ask about your finances, remind them that your financial independence is your business. And most importantly, never let money define your role as a parent. Because at the end of the day, your value isn't in your bank account, it's in the love, wisdom, and guidance you provide. Now, you might be thinking, "Okay, I'll be more careful about discussing money with my children." But what if I told you that there's another sentence parents say all the time, one that seems completely innocent, but can secretly destroy a child's self-esteem? That's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Sentence 3, why can't you be more like your brother/sister? As parents, we often believe comparison is a form of motivation. We think that by pointing out a sibling's achievements, we're encouraging the other child to work harder, to be better. But what do children actually hear? "You're not good enough. No matter what you do, you will never measure up. Mom and Dad love them more." And that is the beginning of something much worse: resentment. Not just resentment toward their sibling, but resentment toward you. Because when children feel compared, they stop feeling loved for who they are. And over time, that resentment doesn't fade, it grows. Let me tell you a story. Karen, now 65 years old, still remembers the words her mother used to say when she was a child. "Look at your sister, she's always so responsible. Why can't you be more like her? Your brother never causes trouble. Why do you always make things difficult?" She heard these words over and over again. At first, she tried harder. She thought, if I can just be more like my sister, maybe Mom will be proud of me too. But no matter how much she tried, the comparisons never stopped. And eventually, something inside her broke. She stopped trying. She stopped caring. And worst of all, she stopped loving her mother the way she used to. Even decades later, long after her mother had passed, that pain still remained. "I forgave her," Karen says, "but I never forgot." That is the power of words. A single sentence, spoken in childhood, can create wounds that last a lifetime. So, how do we fix this? It's simple: see each child for who they are, not who you want them to be. Every child has strengths. Instead of comparing them, highlight what makes them unique. Instead of saying, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" try saying, "I love how creative you are." Instead of saying, "Your brother is so responsible," try saying, "I appreciate the way you see the world differently." Because here's the truth: children don't need to be compared to others to be great. They just need to be seen. Now, you might be thinking, "I won't compare my children anymore." But what if I told you there's another sentence, one that many parents say with good intentions, but in reality, it makes their children feel guilty for the rest of their lives? That's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Sentence 4, I sacrificed so much for you. As parents, we give everything for our children, our time, our energy, our dreams. And sometimes, when we feel unappreciated, we remind them of it. I worked so hard to give you a better life. I sacrificed my happiness so you could have opportunities. You'll never understand how much I've done for you. We say these things because we want them to understand our love, our effort, our struggles. But what do children actually hear? You owe me. No matter what you do, it will never be enough to repay me. You should feel guilty for living your life. And over time, instead of feeling closer to you, they feel something else, pressure. At first, they may try to please you. They may call more, visit more, do things out of obligation. But deep inside, the weight of guilt becomes too much. And eventually, they start to pull away. Not because they don't love you, but because every interaction becomes a reminder of a debt they can never repay. This is exactly what happened to Helen, a 70-year-old mother of 3. For years, she told her children how much she had sacrificed for them. She worked 2 jobs to put them through college. She gave up her dreams so they could have theirs. She never took vacations, never spent money on herself, all for them. At first, her children listened. They were grateful. But as time went on, something changed. They stopped calling as often. They stopped sharing their successes with her. They started feeling more guilt than love. Until one day, her eldest son finally said, "Mom, I love you. But I can't keep living my life feeling like I'm failing you." That's when Helen realized the truth. Her words, meant to express love, had become chains around her children's hearts. So, what's the solution? It's simple: give without expecting. Love without conditions. Instead of reminding your children of your sacrifices, remind them of your love. Instead of saying, "I gave up so much for you," say, "I'm proud of who you've become." Instead of saying, "You'll never understand how much I did for you," say, "All I ever wanted was for you to be happy." Because at the end of the day, love should never feel like a debt. Now, you might be thinking, "I won't put that pressure on my children anymore." But there's one more mistake, the biggest mistake of all. It's the sentence that can silently break a child's spirit, destroy their confidence, and leave a wound that never fully heals. And sadly, most parents don't even realize they're saying it. Let's talk about it next. Sentence 5, you will never succeed if you keep doing this. Parents say this out of frustration, out of fear, or out of love. We want our children to do better, to push themselves, to avoid mistakes. But what do they actually hear? You are a failure. No matter what you try, you will never be good enough. I don't believe in you. And over time, something tragic happens. They start believing it too. Because here's the truth, the way you speak to your child becomes their inner voice. If they hear, "You will never succeed," they will always doubt themselves. If they hear, "You're not capable," they will be afraid to take risks. If they hear, "You're not good enough," they will stop trying altogether. This is exactly what happened to Michael. As a child, he loved to draw. He would spend hours sketching, creating, dreaming. But every time his father saw him with a pencil in his hand, he would say, "You'll never make a living from this. You need to focus on something real. You're wasting your time." And so, little by little, Michael stopped drawing. By the time he was an adult, he had completely given up on his passion. Even when people told him he was talented, he would shake his head and say, "I'm not good enough." Not because it was true, but because he had heard it so many times, he had accepted it as reality. This is the damage that words can do. So, how do we fix this? It's simple: replace criticism with encouragement. Instead of saying, "You'll never succeed if you keep doing this," say, "I believe in you, but have you thought about trying a different approach?" Instead of saying, "This is a waste of time," say, "I can see how passionate you are about this. How can I support you?" Instead of saying, "You need to be more realistic," say, "I admire your ambition. What's your plan to make it work?" Because here's what every child, no matter how old, wants to hear: "I believe in you." And that belief? That is what gives them the strength to succeed. Now, let's bring everything together. We've covered 5 of the most dangerous sentences parents say, often without realizing the lasting damage they can cause. Let's do a quick recap. I have money, my children don't need to take care of me. What your children hear, I don't need you. Instead, say, I love spending time with you. My children know exactly how much money I have. What happens? Money can create division, expectations, and even resentment. Instead, keep financial matters private and plan your legacy wisely. Why can't you be more like your brother/sister? What your child hears, you're not good enough. Instead, acknowledge and appreciate their unique strengths. I sacrificed so much for you. What your child feels, guilt, obligation, and emotional pressure. Instead, express unconditional love without making them feel indebted. You will never succeed if you keep doing this. What your child internalizes, self-doubt and fear of failure. Instead, say, I believe in you, how can I support you? These small changes in words can make a huge difference in how your children feel about themselves and about you. Now, let me ask you. Have you ever said one of these sentences before? Or maybe you've heard them from your own parents. Let me know in the comments. Your story might help someone else realize the power of words. And if you found this video helpful, share it with someone you love, a parent, a grandparent, or anyone who might need to hear this message. Because at the end of the day, family isn't about perfection. It's about connection. And the words you choose today will shape that connection forever. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.